Hello guys, today we're going to be doing a video on CHERNOBYLITE using the RTX 3060 Ti. We're running a Ryzen 3700X with 32GB of RAM running at 3200 MHz. Alright, let's jump into the settings. We're going to be starting it off with 1080p on the Ultra preset. Well, not a preset, the Ultra settings. And shadow set to high, and testing set to TAA medium, and all these extra features are turned off except for tessellation. Alright, we're playing the game in the red forest with rain enabled, just to give it a little bit more, just make it a little bit harder for the card, you know? Game looks fantastic though on Ultra, even at 1080p. Let's continue. Getting 80 FPS, which is not bad for Ultra settings. Normally the Ultra presets are just a lot more demanding than the high, while providing not too much of a visual upgrade. But since we're using a 3060 Ti, there's really no reason for us not to be maxed out. My guess is that the red forest is probably the most demanding area in the game, while the normal cities and the roads that you explore, or the indoor buildings even, are way less demanding. Should be getting far better performance in them. Yeah, there we go. We're getting 96 FPS. Jumping up to almost 100. We're so close. But we don't get there quite. Oh yeah, there we go. And we can actually take a look at the reflections here. We can see that the game's using screen space reflections, since I can just, if I hide the tree, the reflection of the tree just disappears and then comes back in. We finally got the enhanced edition of this game, which gives us access to ray tracing. But before we jump into that, I want to go ahead and test out DirectX 11 versus DirectX 12, since you can't actually access ray tracing with DirectX 11. As you can see, it says D3D11, DirectX 11, and ray tracing is disabled. Alright, jumping back into it, we can see that we're playing with DirectX 12 right now, as it says in the top left, D3D12, and the settings are identical. I didn't touch any of these. It's running the same as before, and now we can, we have ray tracing enabled now. Did it by default. Disable ray tracing. I was gonna say we're running at 40 FPS. That's lost half our frames, but everything else is the same. And even then, okay, we're getting 70 to 80 FPS, so performance seems to be very similar to what we had before. Seems like our performance is a bit better, because we didn't get 110 FPS here. We were sitting in the 99, I think, at 99 FPS, and then once we got to the water, we jumped up to 100. So DirectX 12 is actually running a little bit better than DirectX 11, it seems like. But the frame time graph and the frame rate graph are just way more jumpy. I don't know what causes that, but as you can see, it's not a very smooth line at all. Since we're here, let's go ahead and try out some ray tracing just to see how it looks. Start it off with low maybe, and just see what low ray tracing does for us. We lost 40 FPS by doing so, 30 to 40 FPS by turning on ray tracing to low. And honestly, look at the frame time graph, it looks so bad. And I gotta say, I do feel the stutters now. It's way more obvious when I pan the camera around. It just doesn't feel smooth at all. And let's see if the ray tracing reflections are actually applied. It's gonna stand right here. It does look better, I think, the quality of it compared to screen space reflections. But we should be able to pan the camera down and the trees should stay reflected. And as we can see, the trees are actually disappearing from the reflection, which tells us that this isn't ray traced. So I'm guessing low settings for ray tracing doesn't apply to all reflections. So my guess is that the actual settings for ray tracing doesn't change the quality of the reflections. It just changes what objects will reflect in real time. So medium settings should apply it to all. Oh yeah, look at that. We had a game just crashed. Okay. This is a good place to test that DLSS while we run to the puddle. So let's go ahead and enable DLSS. 1080p usually looks pretty poor for DLSS, but some games do look good still. This looks really good still, I gotta say. This looks really nice. It fits with the atmosphere of the game. We had the puddle, and we're actually getting 50 FPS now. So even with ray tracing and DLSS, we still can't hold 60 FPS on the quality preset. But I'm gonna go ahead and disable it. Okay, the game crashed for the third time when I was changing the settings, so make sure to not change the settings on the fly, especially when it's related to ray tracing, because it causes crashes apparently. Alright, we're here in the puddle. It doesn't seem as deep as... Oh, the game crashed. I had to give up on the ray tracing stuff at 1080p because it's actually crashing every 5 minutes. So yeah, jumping into 1440p now. Same settings, ultra preset, or ultra settings. And this is a great 1440p card. It's the most ideal 1440p card. And for what it's priced at and everything. Anything above it obviously will also work well at 1440p, but this is like the starting ground, I would say, for 1440p gaming. Let's go ahead and head towards that huge puddle. We're going to probably land into the 40s. If it doesn't crash on us. 43, wow, that's so stuttery now. And there's motion blur to it as well. Oh. I thought I disabled motion blur, didn't I? Game crash. So I'm going to go ahead and actually tune the settings a little bit more. Let's bring it back down to high. And shadows low. DLSS set to quality. This should give us 60 FPS hopefully. It's still capped at 57. The mouse movement feels okay. That was 60 FPS. There we go. Much better now. We still do. Is that the storm doing that, or is that just? That's a glitch. That's not the storm, is it? Man, that's so trippy. That actually hurts my eyes. Let me get out of here. 4K now at ultra settings. We're getting only 40 FPS. Wow. It's not a 4K card. It's more of a 1440p card, but 40 FPS is kind of low. I was expecting us to be sitting at maybe 50, maybe the high 40s, but we're getting dips into the 30s as well. It's kind of crazy. Apparently in real life, the radiation leaked into the forest, so a good bit of it is now red. That's why it's called the red forest, and the other half is just a normal forest. It's green. It's so insane to think about. I hope that's true. I hope I don't get baited online, but look at that frame time graph. Okay, we're getting 48 FPS on the road. I'm gonna go ahead and reset and try DirectX 11. FPS is way better here. We're getting 60 FPS. We were sitting at 40 FPS, I think, at 49 maybe. We were in the 40s. Now we're getting 60 FPS here on the road. It's very jumpy, but frame time graph is so smooth, way smoother than what we had at DX12. So it's very inconsistent. Some like 1080p FPS was very similar, I believe, but the frame time graph wasn't as smooth. But looks like you want to go with DX11 if you don't want to use ray tracing. Okay, this is our 4K ultra settings with ray tracing experience, getting 20 FPS. And it crashed. I enabled DLSS and set it to performance. I honestly can't tell a difference. It still looks fantastic. I love how DLSS looks in this game, even at 1080p. But performance is still pretty awful. We're getting 30 to 40 FPS. And frame time graph is crazy with DX12. Very unstable performance. It is what it is. But yeah, I'm going to wrap up the video here, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you found it useful. If you did, give it a like. And a subscription would highly appreciate it. See you next time.